All right, this is going to be part 2 of 2. There's a couple little story I forgot to mention. When I was talking about that 56-year-old man, I'm just going to refer to him as Charlie. When I met him, he taught me a lot of things, like I said earlier, about Illuminati and how this place works, and a little bit about Anunnaki. But I was with him for about a year, close to a year and a half, working with him. But me and him went home to the motel. We were working in Florida back then, and we were working at the college, doing some building some dorms. But we went to the room for lunch, and we're sitting there watching CNN live, because that's when the Gulf War first started up, 91 I think it was. And we were sitting there, and the ambassador to Iraq was on live CNN. And there was this part where the ambassador got really pissed off. The ambassador of Iraq got really mad, and he said to the guys at CNN that were doing the interviewing, "There's a huge communication gap between you and the American people." And he started to say what was going on there. They cut him off, and they turned their chairs on live TV and instantly talked about something else, and just totally changed the subject just that quick. And Charlie stomped his foot, and he said, see, I told you." And that's when I realized that our media is nothing but lies. So that stuck with me. A few years later is when I ended up moving back to Wisconsin permanently. And I moved up here, what was it? I left Florida Christmas Eve night, got up here, ran out of gas, had 3 cents in my pocket. I was like 40 miles away, but my sister came and saved me. But anyway, spent a nice cold freezing winter up here. Landed a tile job working for a tile company in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, down by Madison. And excuse me. But I was living in a small town about 12 miles outside of Madison. I forget the name of the place, the town. I'll put it underneath. But and here I am. I'm still looking for the truth, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to find a small church. Maybe I can find a good preacher, because I had learned some other things, whatever, and weren't quite the truth, but well, yeah, they were, I guess. But anyway, I went to this small church. I brought my little brother with me, and after church was over, I met the preacher, and he was talking with me, and we discovered we only lived a half a block away. So as soon as he discovered that, he's like, "Hey, would you like to come over for Bible study tonight?" And I'm like, yeah, why not? And he goes, "Good, we'll meet at 6 after dinner." That's all right. So we went home and did our thing for the afternoon, and my little brother came with me back over there, and we sat down at the table. He had like a picnic table, pretty nice one, in his kitchen or in his home. It was nice. But we sat down there, and he opened up his Bible, and he started doing the regular the way they do Bible study. And about 2 minutes into it, I stopped him. I said, "Hey, I got an idea." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Let me run home and get my Bible." He's like, "Well, I got one right here." I said, "Trust me, just let me run home and get my Bible. I'll be back in 1 minute." And he looks at me for a few seconds, and he says, "All right." So I ran, got it, come back, and I sat down, and I put the book on the table, and he's like, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" I said, "Let's compare our Bibles." He looked at me for a few seconds without saying anything, and he goes, "All right, well, what do you want to look at?" I said, "Well, let's see what publishers it came from, if they're the same, You know, let's see how close they are to the same book. You know, being exactly the same. You know, if they're printed the same year, what have you. It's like a few more second pause, and he goes, "All right." So we check it out. Same publisher, same book, same book, same religion, everything. And but the only difference that we discovered by the time we were done was that he bought his book at a Christian bookstore in Madison, Wisconsin. I got mine at a Christian bookstore in Lakeland, Florida. And they were about, I think it was 7 or 8 years apart in publishing. But other than that, everything was the same on that aspect of it. And he's like, and he's kind of curious, so he's like, all right, well, now what would you like to do? I said, well, let's open them up and let's compare a sentence or a paragraph. He pauses for a few more seconds. He's like, okay, well, pick one. And I said, well, I really don't know any offhand. I said, you pick one. He's like, okay, Matthew something. So we open it up to it, and he says, now what? Well, I don't know, read one of the sentences or one of the paragraphs there. On the left side, he says, all right. So he read one. I think it might have been 2 sentences long. He's like, all right, now what do you want to do? I said, well, let's open mine up to the same one, and let's read the same 2 sentences. And he pauses for a few more seconds. He goes, all right. So we read it, and what we discovered, there was one word in there changed. And once we discovered that, he's like, all right, now what would you like to do? I said, well, do you got a dictionary? He goes, yeah, I got one in the den. I'll go get it. So he goes and gets it, and sits down, and we look up the definition of that word, and then we look up the definition of the other word in the other book. And we found out that they changed the meaning of that sentence total opposite of each other. And he said, wow, that's interesting. Let's see if we can find a few more. And we did. We found more. We found where they changed 2 words. We'd break out the dictionary and look up the meanings, total opposite of each other. We did this for, I don't know, it might have been 2 hours. But it was getting late. And when he was kind of wowed, and before I left, he says, Robert, what made you think of that? I said, I don't know. I was just thinking, and it popped in my head. And it, and that came from what Charlie was telling me. And at that moment, I guess I wanted to see if I was still looking for all these lies, and at that time, I happened to find it that day. Be interested in, and the preacher also told me, he goes, I'm going to look more into this. I kind of wonder what he's doing today. I hope I helped him get on the right path. But there was something else I wanted to say to that. But yeah, that's when I first realized lies. And then, after that discovery, I got right back into life and doing kind of the same old thing, hanging out with the hard workers and having a good time and stuff for another 15 years or so. I went through a lot of things, but I learned from them all, and finally discovered. Well, I'll get to that in part 3, because I'll be talking about something here in the beginning of that, and then we're going to separate into. We'll see how long that takes, because I need to explain something in the part 3 when I get started with it, and we will and then we're gonna get into. We should be able to get started. So all right.